Hey, everyone. I never thought I'd be posting on here, but here I am. I'm 42, married for 12 years, no kids. My wife, let's call her Emily, is 34. She used to be the sweetest person ever, caring, attentive, funny. We had what I thought was a rock-solid marriage. We had fun together, went on spontaneous weekend trips, and spent nights binge-watching TV shows, wrapped up in each other's arms. But looking back, I guess I missed the early signs. A few months ago, Emily started acting a bit off. She became overly protective of her phone, always leaving the room whenever it rang. She'd suddenly become too tired for our usual weekend outings or even just hanging out at home. Instead, she'd make up some story about needing alone time or saying she needed to focus on her self-care. At first, I thought, okay, maybe she's going through a rough patch at work or something. But deep down, I had this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. I tried talking to her about it a few times, but she brushed me off, saying I was being paranoid or insecure. So, I convinced myself I was overthinking. That was my first mistake. I'm not proud of what I did next. After Emily's evasiveness hit its peak, randomly canceling date nights, disappearing for hours on end with vague excuses like, I'm at the gym, or catching up with an old friend, I couldn't ignore that sick feeling in my gut anymore. So, one night, after she came home late from yoga, I made a decision that still haunts me. I snooped. Emily had been glued to her phone lately, and when she did put it down, she always set it face down on the table, never leaving it unattended for even a second. I knew the passcode from watching her unlock it a million times before things got weird between us. So one night, after she'd fallen asleep in the living room, exhausted, as usual, I took my chance. With trembling hands, I grabbed her phone, unlocked it, and went straight to her messages. I'll never forget that moment. My heart was hammering in my chest so loud I was sure it'd wake her up. I scrolled through a few contacts. Nothing seemed out of place, until I stumbled across a thread from someone named Chris. I didn't know a Chris, and I'd never heard her mention one before. Something about it felt wrong, so I opened the chat. My whole world crumbled within seconds. There were messages, dozens of them, maybe more. Flirty at first, casual even, like two old friends reminiscing. But then, the tone shifted. My hands started to shake uncontrollably as I read. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. I love the way you kissed me when we were at that hotel. Next time, I'm going to do everything I didn't get to finish last time. You're driving me insane. There was even a photo attached, one of Emily in a black dress I'd never seen before, looking stunning and happy. The kind of happiness I hadn't seen on her face in months. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 weeks ago. That night she told me she was out with her girlfriends. I wanted to throw up. This was it, the proof I'd been too afraid to find. My wife, the woman I trusted with my heart and soul, was having an affair. And she wasn't even trying to hide it that well. I guess she didn't think I'd ever check. Or maybe she just didn't care enough to cover her tracks. Either way, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Emily was cheating on me. And the worst part? She seemed so comfortable, so casual about it. Like this wasn't some dirty secret she was hiding, but just her new normal. I kept scrolling, feeling sicker with every new text I read. There were plans for future meetups, conversations about how they couldn't wait to see each other again. Chris wrote to her as if I didn't exist. He called her his girl, talked about how he wanted to make her his forever. My mind was spiraling. Who the hell was this guy? How long had this been going on? How had I been so blind? That's when I found the hotel reservation. She'd forwarded the confirmation to her email, our email, by accident, apparently. I saw it all laid out right there. Date, time. Even a stupid romantic sweet package they'd booked. It was the day she told me she was working overtime at the office. I sat down hard, staring at the screen. It wasn't just messages. It wasn't just flirtation. It was concrete. She'd been lying to my face and running around with this Chris guy behind my back, laughing and smiling and doing God knows what else. My hands were clammy, and I felt like I was about to pass out, but I kept going. I had to know everything. I checked her call logs. She called him every day, sometimes multiple times, usually during her lunch break or right after she left for errands. My throat tightened as I realized I'd probably called her at the same time on more than one occasion. She would hang up with me, switch over to him, and keep chatting away. It made me feel pathetic. Finally, I went to her social media. There wasn't much there. She never posted much, but I checked her private messages. Again, Chris. And that's when I saw something that sent me into a blind rage. A message she'd sent him a few days ago. I feel like he's starting to notice. I don't care, though. I'm just so tired of pretending to be happy with him. Tired of pretending to be happy with me? Me? The husband who'd worked long hours to make sure she had everything she wanted, who'd supported her career changes and new hobbies, who'd been there for every little thing she needed. She was pretending all this time? It was like a knife straight through my heart. What the hell was I supposed to do with that? That night, I put her phone back on the table, exactly where it had been, and staggered into the bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the man looking back at me. I was trembling, my face flushed, my eyes wide and bloodshot. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think straight. I kept replaying everything in my head, every lie, every stupid excuse I believed. Every time I trusted her, defended her, convinced myself she wouldn't do this. But she did. And now, I had to figure out what the hell to do next. I spent the rest of that sleepless night going over every option in my head, rehearsing what I was going to say to Emily. Part of me wanted to yell, scream, break things, wake her up right there, and then shove her phone in her face. But another part of me, a more rational, if not equally devastated part, knew I needed a clear head for this. I wanted her to know that I knew, that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. But I also didn't want her to twist things around and make me out to be the crazy one. I wanted the truth, all of it, and I wanted her to see what her lies had done to me. So, I waited. That whole next day, I acted like nothing was wrong. I went to work, put on a brave face, smiled and chatted with my coworkers, all the while feeling like I was dying inside. When I got home that evening, Emily was already there, lounging on the couch with her laptop in her lap, looking so calm and unbothered. The sight of her made me sick. "Hey, babe," she greeted me without looking up. "How was your day?" I stood there for a moment, staring at her like she was some stranger who just walked into my house. I couldn't understand how she could look so normal, so serene, when she was actively tearing my heart to pieces. "Fine," I muttered, throat tight. "We need to talk." That caught her attention. She glanced up, frowning. "What's up?" she asked, feigning concern like the perfect little wife she used to be. "Who's Chris?" I blurted out. No build-up, no easing into it. I just went straight for the jugular. I wanted to see her face when she realized she'd been caught. Emily's eyes widened just a fraction, her lips parting slightly, but then, so quick I almost missed it, her expression smoothed over. She shrugged, trying to play it cool. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb, Emily," I snapped, louder than I'd intended. My voice echoed through the room, and I noticed her flinch ever so slightly. "Who the hell is Chris? The guy you've been calling, texting, meeting up with at hotels? Who the F***K is he?" She stared at me, her eyes narrowing, and then, unbelievably, she smirked. "You've been snooping through my phone, huh?" she said, a little laugh escaping her. "Wow, didn't take you for that kind of guy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She sounded almost amused, like she found the whole thing entertaining. "That's what you're worried about? Me snooping? That's your response?" "Why wouldn't it be?" she shot back, shrugging. "You violated my privacy. I thought we were better than that." My fists clenched at my sides. "We were better than that until you decided to start screwing around behind my back?" "Really?" Emily tilted her head, her smirk turning into a sneer. "So, this is how it's going to be? You throw a tantrum because I found someone who actually makes me happy? That hit like a sucker punch. Makes you happy?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "I've done everything for you, Emily. I've been there for you, supported you, given you everything I could. And now you're telling me you're happy because of some other guy?" She rolled her eyes, as if I was some annoying child. "Yeah, I am," she said coldly. "Because you're suffocating, Tom. You think being a good husband means throwing money at me and asking me how my day was. You think that's love? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Suffocating? Asking about her day? That was suffocating now? I felt my hands tremble as I struggled to keep my composure. And what, exactly, did I do to deserve this? I gestured wildly to her phone, to the whole house, to everything that represented our marriage crumbling to dust. What the hell made you decide to go and cheat on me? Cheat on you, she repeated, her voice dripping with mock incredulity. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Tom. It's not like you were giving me anything real anymore. You barely even noticed me until I started pulling away. And you know what? Chris noticed. He made me feel wanted. Wanted? I choked out. What about me, Emily? I thought we were happy. I thought we were in this together. Yeah, well, you thought wrong. Her tone was so dismissive, so uncaring, it made my blood boil. I was bored, Tom. I was miserable, pretending to be happy while you acted like everything was fine. I needed more. And Chris gave it to me. I felt like I was losing my mind. So, what now? You just throw everything away because you're bored? Is that it? Maybe, she said nonchalantly, crossing her arms over her chest. Or maybe I just finally grew up and realized I didn't want to waste any more time playing house with someone who's more obsessed with his job and his perfect little life than he is with his own wife. That was it. I couldn't listen to her any longer. I took a step back, shaking my head in disbelief. I don't even know who you are anymore. I guess you never did then, she said with a shrug, like none of this mattered. Like I didn't matter. I turned and walked away, my heart breaking with every step. I'd come into this confrontation hoping for some kind of remorse, some kind of explanation that would make it all hurt a little less. But Emily didn't care. She didn't even try to apologize or justify herself. She just stood there, looking at me like I was the crazy one for even daring to confront her about her affair. It was like every good memory I had of us was a lie. And I realized, right then and there, that I couldn't fix this. I couldn't fix us. After that confrontation, I felt like I was floating in some horrible dream. The kind where everything's warped and distorted, and you can't quite tell what's real. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out all the insides and left me a shell of myself. I spent that night in the guest room, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to comprehend how everything could have gone so wrong so quickly. The worst part? She didn't even come to check on me. No apologies, no tears, no trying to fix things, nothing. Emily went about her evening as if nothing had happened. She made herself dinner, watched TV, and then casually strolled to bed without a single look in my direction. That was when it hit me. She truly didn't care. The next few days were a blur of pain and confusion. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything I'd seen in those messages, every word she'd said to me. I felt like an idiot, a complete fool. I thought back to all the little moments where I should have seen it. Her disinterest, her excuses, the way she'd pull away from me physically and emotionally. But I'd brushed it off, convinced myself she was just stressed or tired. I'd always been the one to make excuses for her. And now I realized I'd been making those excuses for months. At one point, I remembered this trip we took to the mountains last winter. It was a spontaneous getaway I'd planned because she'd seemed so distant, and I thought a change of scenery would help. I'd arranged everything. A cozy cabin, snowshoeing through the forest, a fancy dinner by the fireplace. But I remembered now how distracted she'd been, how she kept checking her phone and going outside to take important calls from work, how I'd asked her if everything was okay, and she'd snapped at me, saying I was being too clingy. That was the trip where I'd almost lost it, where I'd started to think something was really wrong. But she talked me down, made me feel guilty for even questioning her. God, you're so paranoid sometimes, she'd said, rolling her eyes. Just relax, will you? Enjoy the trip. Yeah, she told me to enjoy the trip while she was texting that bastard the whole time. I remember sitting there, sipping hot chocolate and watching the snow fall outside, thinking, this is perfect. But it had never been perfect. It had been AF ****ing lie. I felt like a complete idiot. Every memory we shared, every moment I thought was real, had been tainted. I'd built this life with her, poured everything I had into our marriage, only to find out it had been crumbling beneath my feet this entire time. I considered talking to her again, trying to get some more answers, but I knew it was pointless. She'd shown me who she was: cold, indifferent, almost mocking. The woman I'd married had turned into a complete stranger. No, not a stranger. A manipulative, heartless, lying stranger who didn't give a damn about me or our marriage. The worst part? There were moments when I felt a twisted sense of hope. Like, maybe this was just a phase, a fling she'd gotten caught up in, and she'd snap out of it. Maybe we could go to therapy, talk it out, rebuild what we had. But every time I thought about that confrontation, that smirk on her face, that sneer when she called me suffocating, my hope crumbled to dust. I hated her. I hated her so much I couldn't stand it. I wanted to scream at her, hurt her the way she'd hurt me, but I knew it wouldn't matter. She was already gone, emotionally checked out. I was just the guy paying the bills, the guy keeping a roof over her head while she played house with someone else. The betrayal wasn't just about her sleeping with someone else. It was the way she belittled me, made me feel like the fool for even caring. Every look, every word, every casual dismissal, it all screamed one thing: you don't matter. I confided in one of my closest friends, Mike, about what was happening. We'd been buddies since college, and he was the first person I turned to. I needed to say it out loud, to get it off my chest. He was shocked, of course, but he didn't try to sugarcoat things. "Man, I'm sorry," he said, shaking his head. "But you can't keep living like this. She's not just cheating on you. She's and walking all over you. You have to do something." But what? I asked myself that question over and over again. What the hell was I supposed to do? Divorce her? Kick her out? It felt like a massive, irreversible decision, like stepping off a cliff and hoping I'd land on something soft. I'd never imagined my life without her. As much as I hated her, as much as I wanted to hurt her back, the idea of just ending things terrified me. I'd put so much of myself into this marriage. What would be left of me once it was over? Mike was right, though. I couldn't keep living like this, angry, hurt, humiliated. I'd become a shell of who I used to be. I barely recognized myself anymore. Then, one evening, a few days after our fight, Emily came up to me out of the blue, as if nothing had happened. She looked at me with this casual, almost bored expression and said, "So, what's your plan, Tom? Are you going to keep sulking around like a kicked puppy? Or are you finally going to do something about it?" I stared at her, completely speechless. It was like she was taunting me, daring me to react. She wanted to push me, wanted to see me snap. And that's when I made my decision. The moment Emily threw that challenge at me, something inside me clicked. It was like she'd flicked a switch I didn't know I had. All my sadness, confusion, and self-pity evaporated, replaced by a cold, burning resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. If she wanted a reaction, she was going to get one. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rage or beg. No, I wanted to do something she'd never see coming. I took a deep breath and looked her dead in the eyes, giving her a smile that must have thrown her off because I saw her smirk falter for a split second. "I do have a plan, Emily," I said calmly, "and you're going to see it soon enough." Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Oh, really?" she sneered. "Is this where you pretend to grow a backbone and threaten to leave? Please, spare me the drama." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked away, grabbed my jacket, and headed out the door, leaving her standing there looking confused. I wasn't leaving her, not yet. I had something else in mind. I spent the next few hours driving around town, thinking, plotting, and trying to calm the adrenaline rushing through my veins. If I wanted to outsmart her, I needed to play it cool. After some time, I called up Mike and asked him to meet me at our usual spot, a bar downtown where we used to hang out before I got too busy with married life. When I told Mike what I was thinking, he stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Tom, are you serious? You want to do that?" "Why not?" I replied, shrugging. "She's been lying to me, treating me like garbage. I'm done being the nice guy, Mike. She wants a reaction. Well, I'm going to give her one. And it's going to be one she'll never forget." He looked at me, and then, with a sigh, nodded. "Okay, man. I'm with you. But just know, once we start this, there's no going back. I nodded. I know. I'm ready. The next few days were probably the hardest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal, smile when she talked to me, act like I wasn't slowly unraveling inside. I had to watch her sneer at me, throw snide comments my way, and behave as if I was some pathetic loser who couldn't do anything about his cheating wife. But every time she smirked or rolled her eyes at me, I just kept my cool, knowing that my plan was already in motion. The twist came a few days later when I got a text from Emily's other man. Yes, Chris. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw his name pop up. My heart was pounding as I opened the message. Hey, this is Chris. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. For a moment, I was stunned. What the hell was this about? Why was he reaching out to me now? Did Emily tell him I knew? I was sure she hadn't, because she'd been acting like everything was still under her control. Curiosity and anger boiling inside me, I took a deep breath and replied, What do you want, Chris? His response came quickly. I know about Emily. I know she's married to you. And I know she's been lying to both of us. What the F***? I blinked at the message, reading it over and over, trying to wrap my head around what he was saying. Was he actually admitting he knew about me and was okay with it? I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to throw my phone against the wall. Get to the point, I typed back, my hands shaking. I thought I was the only one, he replied. I thought I was her one and only special guy outside of her marriage. But it turns out she's been seeing someone else behind both our backs. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. She was cheating on her affair partner? The realization hit me like a freight train, and I almost burst out laughing. So, this was Emily's game. It wasn't just me and Chris. There was another guy, another poor bastard getting played by her manipulative bullsh*t. This was beyond anything I'd expected. I quickly arranged to meet Chris at a cafe near my office, the place where Emily would never think to look for me. When I saw him in person, I realized just how well she'd orchestrated everything. Chris was younger than me, mid-30s maybe, athletic build, dressed in business casual attire, everything I wasn't. He looked just as exhausted and betrayed as I felt. Nice to meet you, I guess, he said, offering a half-hearted handshake. I shook it, studying him. So, you thought she was only cheating on me with you? He nodded, looking almost embarrassed. Yeah, until I saw a message on her phone from some guy named Ryan. She was telling him the same *t she used to tell me. I can't wait to see you, babe. And last night was amazing. It was like a bad deja vu. Ryan? A third guy? My head was spinning. I'd thought I knew Emily, thought I understood the depths of her betrayal. But now it was like looking at a completely different person. How deep did this go? How many people had she lied to, manipulated, toyed with? So what now? I asked, leaning back, my mind racing with new possibilities. You came to me because I'm done with her *t, Chris said firmly. And I think we should both make sure she gets what she deserves. That's when it clicked, the final piece of the puzzle. A small, dangerous smile formed on my lips. You know what, Chris? I think you're absolutely right. We spent the next hour hatching a plan, one that would expose Emily for the lying, cheating manipulator she was. If she thought she could keep humiliating me and everyone else, she was about to get the shock of her life. It was time to pull the rug out from under her perfect little world and watch her crumble. After my meeting with Chris, I felt a surge of energy that I hadn't experienced in weeks. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I wasn't the helpless victim. I wasn't just waiting around for Emily to throw another jab my way. I had a plan, and with Chris on board, I had an ally. Someone who knew firsthand how dangerous and deceitful Emily could be. We agreed to keep our communications discreet and limited. I didn't want Emily to get even a whiff of what we were planning. She thought she was playing all of us, that she had everything under control. I wanted her to keep thinking that right up until the moment it all came crashing down around her. Step 1 was gathering more information. Proof. Really. I already had enough to confront her about the affair, but I needed something that would shatter her web of lies beyond repair. Chris and I decided to reach out to Ryan, the other guy Emily was seeing. If we could get him on board, It would be the final nail in her coffin. Getting in touch with Ryan was trickier than I'd expected. I knew nothing about him except his name and a few details Chris had managed to piece together from snooping through Emily's messages. We finally managed to track down his social media, and after some hesitation, I messaged him directly. "Hey, Ryan. This is Tom, Emily's husband. I know this is probably the last message you expected to get, but I think we need to talk." It was a shot in the dark. He could have ignored me, blocked me, or simply told Emily everything and blown our cover. But to my surprise, he replied within the hour. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. "Are you really her husband? Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," I wrote back. "I know about you and Emily, and I'm not here to blame you or cause trouble. I just want you to know that you're not the only one she's been lying to." Ryan's response was silence at first, then a flood of questions and anger. He didn't believe it at first. He demanded proof, accused me of trying to mess with him, told me to stay out of his business. It took a while to convince him, but once I showed him the screenshots of Emily's text to Chris, the hotel reservations, and a few photos that clearly showed Emily with Chris, his tone changed. "Holy sh**t," he finally replied, his messages becoming more disjointed and erratic as the reality of the situation hit him. She told me she was single. She said she was looking for something serious. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction reading his disbelief. It was like watching someone else go through the same gut-wrenching revelation I had gone through. But I didn't have time to revel in it. I needed him to focus. "Listen, I know this sucks. I know you're pissed off and hurt. But we can't let her keep doing this to us, to anyone. Are you willing to help us put an end to it?" There was a long pause before his next reply. "What do you need me to do?" And just like that, we had our third player in the game. The plan was simple but devastating. We'd gather every scrap of evidence, every text, every call, every sneaky rendezvous, compile it all, and present it to her at the same time. Chris and Ryan would show up at our house one evening, unannounced, while Emily and I were having dinner. There would be no way for her to deny or wiggle her way out of it. We'd confront her together, back her into a corner, and force her to face the truth. But that wasn't all. I wanted to hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation. Emily prided herself on her image as a strong, independent woman, a mentor in her field, a role model for young women looking to make it in the business world. The Emily everyone saw was poised, professional kind. They had no idea she was a manipulative, cheating mess in private. I wanted everyone to know the real her. So, while Chris and Ryan gathered their evidence, I reached out to a few mutual friends and colleagues, people I knew Emily respected. I wasn't going to give them the whole story, not yet, but I planted a few seeds of doubt. I mentioned that Emily seemed stressed lately, that she'd been acting differently, that there were some things going on in our marriage I was trying to work through. It wasn't much, but I knew it would get people talking. When the big night finally arrived, I was practically buzzing with anticipation. Emily had no idea what was coming. She'd actually been in a surprisingly good mood all week, probably thinking she'd gotten away with everything. She was back to her old self, smiling, joking, even trying to get physical with me a few times, as if she could just sweep everything under the rug and go back to pretending we were the perfect couple. It made my skin crawl, but I played along. I let her think she'd won. "Dinner's almost ready," she called from the kitchen as I set the table. "I made your favorite, spaghetti carbonara." "Sounds great," I replied, forcing a smile as I glanced at the clock. Chris and Ryan would be here any minute. I told them to wait until we were mid-dinner, to make sure Emily was caught completely off guard. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Chris letting me know they were at the door. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and called out, "Hey, babe, can you grab the Parmesan from the fridge? I think I heard someone at the door." Emily gave me a puzzled look but nodded, turning to open the refrigerator. I made my way to the front door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. When I opened the door and saw Chris and Ryan standing there, I couldn't help the dark grin that spread across my face. They looked ready for war, just as determined as I was to put an end to Emily's lies. "Ready?" I whispered. They both nodded, and together, we stepped inside, shutting the door behind us with a quiet click. I led them down the hallway, my pulse racing, until we reached the kitchen. Emily turned around, still holding the block of Parmesan in one hand, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she registered who was standing in our house. "What the?" she started, her eyes darting between me, Chris, and Ryan. "Surprise, babe," I said softly, watching as her face drained of color. "We need to talk." And just like that, the trap was sprung. For a few seconds, there was complete silence, like the moment right before a thunderstorm breaks the sky open. Emily stood there, frozen, the block of Parmesan slipping from her fingers and crashing to the floor, shattering the silence with a sharp clack. Her eyes widened as she stared at Chris and Ryan, her face a twisted mix of confusion, fear, and anger. What the hell is going on?" she stammered, glancing at me like I'd somehow lost my mind. "Why are they here, Tom? What is this?" I could see her trying to piece it together, the gears in her head spinning furiously. She wasn't used to being caught off guard, wasn't used to losing control. She'd always been the one to pull the strings, but now the strings were tangled around her throat and she was choking on them. I took a step forward, keeping my voice low and steady. "What's going on, Emily? Is that we all know everything? There's no more hiding, no more lying. It's over." Her eyes darted to Chris, and I saw a flicker of something there. Recognition, maybe even guilt, but she quickly masked it with a scowl. "Chris, what are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice rising an octave. "I told you not to." "Shut up, Emily," Chris interrupted, his tone cold and hard. He looked different than when I first met him, no longer the confused, hurt guy who thought he was the only one being played. Now he was angry, determined, and focused. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You don't get to tell any of us what to do." Emily's mouth dropped open, and she turned to Ryan, her face twisting with desperation. "And you? Why are you here, Ryan? What's going on?" Ryan crossed his arms, looking at her with a mixture of contempt and pity. "I'm here because you lied to me, Emily. You told me I was the only one, that you were single, that you were finding yourself after some bad relationships." He shook his head slowly. "But it turns out, I'm just another fool you were stringing along." I could see the panic in her eyes now, the cracks forming in her cool facade. Wait, this isn't what you think. You guys are blowing this way out of proportion. I can explain." "No, you can't," I cut in, my voice steady and firm. I took another step closer, until I was standing right in front of her. "Because there's nothing left to explain. You've been lying, cheating, and manipulating us all. And now it's time to face the consequences." "Consequences?" she spat, the fear quickly morphing into defensive anger. "What consequences? What are you talking about? This is insane." I turned to Chris, giving him a small nod. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of printed screenshots. Every text message, every suggestive photo, every hotel reservation and call log they'd exchanged. He slapped the pile down on the kitchen counter, right in front of Emily. "Here's your consequences," Chris said, his voice dripping with disdain. "We've got everything, Emily. Every dirty little secret, every lie you told. And guess what? It's not just us who know about it anymore." Her face went pale as she flipped through the pages, her eyes widening with every new piece of evidence she saw. You kept all this?" she whispered, looking up at Chris with genuine shock. Why? Chris echoed, raising his eyebrows incredulously. "Because I didn't want to be the idiot who let you walk all over him. I wanted proof, something to show people what kind of person you really are." "And by people," I added, stepping in, "he means your friends, your coworkers, your family. I sent a little preview to a few of them earlier today, just enough to get them interested. Imagine what they'll think when they see everything." "What?" Emily's voice was almost a shriek now, a mixture of fury and fear. You didn't." "Oh, I did," I said, holding her gaze steadily. "I sent it to that little Facebook group you've got with your professional women mentors. And don't worry, I made sure to tag a few of the women who look up to you the most. You know, the ones who think you're such an inspiration." I saw her face twitch at that, her lips parting, but no sound came out. It was like she'd been punched in the gut. She looked around the room wildly, like a cornered animal searching for an escape route, but there was none. "Tom, please," she whispered, dropping all pretense of anger now. "Don't do this. You don't have to destroy me like this. We can talk about it, fix things. I'll change, No, I said flatly, cutting off her pathetic plea. There's no fixing this, Emily. There's no going back. She turned to Ryan, her voice breaking. "Ryan, you know me. You know I'm not a bad person. I just got caught up in things. You understand, don't you? We can talk about this, right? Work it out." Ryan shook his head slowly. "No, Emily. I don't want to work anything out with you. Not now, not ever." I watched as she turned back to me, her eyes brimming with tears now, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Tom, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I didn't mean to hurt me?" I echoed, feeling a surge of anger flare up again. "You've been doing nothing but hurting me for months, maybe even longer. You tore our marriage apart, lied to my face every single day, made me feel like I was the crazy one. And now you want me to believe you're sorry?" Emily stood there, her tears finally spilling over as she looked at me, at Chris, and at Ryan. All the arrogance, the smugness that she'd wielded like a weapon during our first confrontation was gone. What was left was a broken woman, stripped of her lies, with no more control over the situation. But I felt no pity for her. None. She deserved every bit of pain she was feeling right now. "Tom, please, just give me a chance to explain," she pleaded, her voice hoarse with desperation. "I made mistakes, okay? I know I hurt you, but we can talk through this, right? I still love you. I don't want to lose you. Please." Her words were empty, pathetic. She was just grasping at straws, trying to manipulate me again, to twist the knife just a little deeper so she could stay in control. But I was done with her games. There was no coming back from this. I shook my head slowly, holding up my hand to silence her. "No, Emily, it's over. There's nothing left to talk about." "But," she started, reaching out as if she could physically hold on to me, but I stepped back, making her falter. "Tom, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I know I messed up. I know I lied. But we've been together for so long. We built a life together. You can't just throw it all away." "Throw it away?" I repeated, feeling my rage bubbling up again. "You threw it away the moment you decided that you could screw around behind my back with multiple guys. You thought you could get away with it, that you could have your fun and still keep me in the dark. But you lost. And now, you're going to face the consequences." Her gaze darted to Chris and then to Ryan, her face crumpling even more. "You guys, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was just confused. I didn't know what I wanted." Ryan's jaw tightened, his voice icy. "You knew exactly what you wanted, Emily. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. But it's over now." Chris stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. "I trusted you, Emily. You made me believe that we had something special, that I was the only one. But you were playing all of us, laughing at us behind our backs. You deserve everything that's coming your way." Emily looked like she was about to say something more, to beg or plead or maybe even scream, but I didn't let her. I took out my phone, keeping my voice calm and level as I spoke. "You see, Emily, this isn't just about revenge. This is about showing you that your actions have consequences. So, I made a few arrangements." I swiped through my phone, pulling up a video call, and after a few seconds, the screen lit up. It was Emily's parents, staring back at us with expressions of shock and confusion. What's going on?" her mother asked, frowning at the sight of Chris, Ryan, and me standing in the kitchen. "Tom, what's happening? Why do you have us on a video call?" Emily gasped, her face going white as a sheet. "No, Tom, no, you can't." "Yes, I can," I said firmly, locking eyes with her. "They deserve to know what kind of person you are." "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry you have to hear this like this," I continued, my voice steady. "But your daughter has been cheating on me for months. Not just with one man, but with two. She's been lying to me, lying to them, and manipulating us all. And I'm done covering for her." Her parents' faces went through a range of emotions: shock, disbelief, and finally, a mix of sorrow and anger. Her father's voice was a low, dangerous growl when he finally spoke. "Emily, is this true?" he demanded, his face tight with rage. "You've been cheating on Tom? After everything he's done for you? After everything we've done for you?" "No, Dad, it's not like that," Emily cried, shaking her head furiously. "They're making it sound worse than it is. I made some bad choices, okay? But I never meant for it to get this far. I was lonely and confused and Lonely? Her mother snapped, her face twisted with disgust. "You've got a husband who's devoted to you, who loves you, and you were lonely? And this is how you handle it? By sleeping around with other men?" "I wasn't just sleeping around," Emily shouted, her voice breaking. "It wasn't like that." I felt my lip curl at her pathetic attempt to defend herself. "Then what was it like, Emily? Because all I see are messages about secret meetings, hotel rooms, and lies. What do you call that?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing she could say, no excuse she could make that would justify what she'd done. Her parents stared at her, their disappointment and disgust palpable even through the screen. I turned the phone so the camera captured all three of us, me, Chris, and Ryan, standing together, a united front against her deceit. "Emily, meet the two men you've been screwing behind my back. Chris, the one you told was your escape from your suffocating marriage, and Ryan, the one you promised you were ready to settle down with once you got a clean break." "Is this true?" her father repeated, his voice trembling with barely controlled fury. "You lied to them too?" Emily's lips trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Dad, Enough," her mother snapped. "We're ashamed of you, Emily. Truly ashamed." The look on her face was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Complete devastation, like her world was crumbling in real time. For the first time, I saw real panic and fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for what she was losing. Not just me, not just her lovers, but her parents' respect, her reputation, everything she thought she'd keep even if she was exposed. "Tom, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, don't do this. I'll leave. I won't fight you on the divorce. Just please, don't take this any further. I'll disappear. No, Emily," I said softly, my voice as cold as ice. "You don't get to dictate the terms anymore. You don't get to just disappear and pretend none of this happened. You're going to face what you've done, and everyone is going to know who you really are." She looked like she was about to say something, to beg some more, but I ended the call, cutting off her parents' stunned, horrified faces. I pocketed the phone and turned to Chris and Ryan. "You guys good?" I asked quietly. They nodded, both looking drained but resolute. "Yeah," Chris said finally, his voice tight. "We're good." Ryan let out a long breath, looking like a huge weight had just been lifted off his shoulders. "It's over." Emily stood there, staring at us like a cornered animal, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then, I turned and headed toward the door, Chris and Ryan following close behind. "Tom," Emily's broken whisper followed me as I reached the threshold. "Please, don't leave me." But I didn't look back. "Goodbye, Emily," I said quietly, and with that, I walked out of the house, feeling a strange, unfamiliar sense of freedom. It was finally over, and she was left to pick up the pieces of the shattered life she tried to build on the backs of lies. The consequences she'd never thought would come had finally arrived.